Howdy, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of David's Saturday Night Sit Back, where tonight, sitting back with me, I have Justin De La Cruz, aka the Toss Guy, owner of Toss Pizzeria here in Austin, Texas, and senior vice president at the Stratford Property Group. When he's not tossing pizza, you can find Justin at ACL, watching basketball or Week, raising his family, traveling the globe to domestic locations such as New York, Disney World, and San Diego, or even international destinations such as Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, or enjoying some iron therapy at the gym. Justin, thank you for being here and welcome to your episode on David's Saturday Night Sit Back.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. How's your 2025 kicking off so far?
Pretty good so far. Yeah,
Are you happy?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's been a good start.
Good. Who do you hope this podcast reaches?
That's a good question. I think a lot of my focus, lately has been on personal growth. So maybe anyone that is maybe striving to connect with themselves from an entrepreneur perspective or father perspective, family person perspective. Really, anyone that's maybe looking for purpose for themselves. And yeah.
Yeah. Um, and why, knowing what we'll talk about, is there any particular reason that you think the audience should stick around for this episode?
Um, Well, I think I've learned a lot in entrepreneurship, and I've always believed you can learn a lot from other people's mistakes and experiences. So, if there's any interest in entrepreneurship, I'm happy to share where there's been opportunities to be better and to in the growth that I've experienced through mistakes or hardships. So yeah, maybe there's an opportunity to learn from a mistake or experience that I've been through for someone else starting any other kind of business or something like that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Someone asked me an icebreaker question recently, and I really liked it, so I'm going to
Okay.
ask it of you. What's your superpower?
Oh, um, I'd say there's times when I can get people united to work on things together, especially when there's of real substance. Even when starting the restaurant, there was really no experience in that realm at all. But being energized and sharing that energy with others, it helps people come together for a united front. So I think that's something that I've looked back on and seen as an ability that I've been able to do is get people together, united behind one objective, and be excited about it and spread that excitedness with others.
That's an awesome ability.
Yeah.
Yeah, uniting people is. I love that answer. I've asked this question of probably 20, 30 people now, ever since it was asked of me about a month ago. And people give me all kinds of different answers, but no one has sort of gone down the ability to unify people route. So that's cool.
Cool. Yeah.
Why pizza specifically? There's so
Uh,
many foods out there.
Yeah,
That,
no. And there's a lot of pizza places in Austin now. It started with a trip to Chicago. A good friend of mine that I grew up with was getting married, and oh man, I couldn't even date this trip anymore. Um, but we went out to some of the pizza places there, the iconic ones in Chicago, and at the time, I was working for Sprint. I think I'd been with them at that point probably 10, 11 years. I had started doing a little bit of real estate as well, kind of on the side at the time, or before that. And there was just some inspiration during that trip that, "Hey, what about starting a pizza place in Austin?" And it was really the thought around there's really not any good pizza places in Austin. And at the time, there's a lot of great pizza places now in Austin. And so that was kind of the seed that got planted, was during that trip. And then um, the mind started going a bit after that and started going, you know what? It just felt like something I wanted to do, and it just stayed in me for a long time. And it probably was about from that trip to actually opening Toss was probably the gap in that was probably like 6 or 7 years. So it wasn't like a very quick process, but I was determined and went through, a lot of learning to get to the point of actually being able to open. Um, and I've I've had reflection on what was the motivation behind that, and I think it ultimately was to create a place to bring people together,
Yeah.
and to enjoy themselves and to come in. I think hospitality was very natural to me, and I enjoyed helping other people and seeing joy in other people. And I mean, who doesn't show up with a smile on their face when they're there to have pizza, enjoy some good drinks, and in our establishments also there's TVs up to watch games, so they're showing up in a good mood, and
Yeah.
just to further culminate that was something that was we were excited to do at Toss and continue to work on all the time.
It's hard to be in a bad mood when you're eating good
I say
pizza.
that I say that all the time. It's like,
There's a
pe-
couple times in life where it's just like, how could you be upset right now?
yeah, it's like the service industry itself is challenging. So one thing I like to say to staff is people are showing up ready for pizza and drinks and watching the game. Like they're here in a good mood, and feed off of that.
Yeah.
Because it's a difference versus them showing up for like a doctor's appointment or these other things that they can walk in stressful with a problem.
Hmm.
They're coming in hungry, ready for pizza, and we've got the solution for that. So it's a good space to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, with phones these days, people can just Google it. But what part of town is it in?
We've got one location in South Austin, on South First Street, and then we've got another location in Bee Cave.
And was that on accident, on purpose? How the specific locations come about?
Yeah, so the first location is on South First Street in South Austin. We originally were working on a location downtown that fell through. The location on First Street, ironically, was right out of college. I lived probably a mile from there, so I was very familiar with that area of town, and I think that served a good purpose to know that area very well and
Yeah.
know the people in that area and the vibe of that area, of South Austin, and to create something that continued to have that South Austin vibe. Like that was a big part of our mission when we opened up,
Yeah.
and still now. Yeah.
I'm in I'm in Bee Cave all the time,
Hmm.
usually for the gym. So the next
Yeah.
time I'm there and I'm hungry
Yeah. Stop
afterwards,
through.
maybe I'll stop
And
through.
Bee Cave location is different than our South First location. Is a different demographic overall, different age group, and the reasoning to go out there was really you know to bring what we opened in South Austin to a more family friendly area. From myself, I've got two kids, and we always would go to places that the kids would be happy and that would satisfy us. So even if the food was just mediocre, it's like fine, the kids are happy, they're eating, they're excited, and really the goal was to create a place that the parents were just as excited to go as the kids were, and to have high quality food, high quality drinks, an environment that was fun, and high level of service. And so it wasn't just a place that parents took their kids to just to keep their kids happy, which I felt I've done that plenty of times. It was a place to keep everybody happy, and just a fun environment all around.
Is there anything is there anything about the pizza that makes it a little bit unique? Not looking for like a specific
Yeah,
recipe or anything, but did you guys do anything with the menu to be like, this is how we're gonna stand out from our competition?
yeah. First, we do New York style pizza, which there's a good amount of New York style pizza in town. One thing that we do and is we use a lot of fresh ingredients. So we make our own dough in house. We make our own marinara in house. We use extremely high quality toppings. Um, but then we also did some unique things that does differentiate us. Like we partner with Terry Blacks and we do a brisket pizza with them. That is
Ah,
just, I mean, it's really good. It's one of my favorite ones that we do. We also do a pizza of the month, and a wing of the month every month. So
yes.
my kind of challenge some of the chefs, the cooks that we have in there, for them to come up with ideas, get creative, let the staff get creative with that. And I mean, we've done all kinds. Like it's January right now, so everybody kind of has health conscious right at the
Yep.
beginning of the year. So we have a cheat day pizza, and it literally is a queso base, with mozzarella, sausage, and jalapenos on there.
Oh
So
my
very unique.
God.
It's not something you would typically see on pizza, but it works really well. This is really really good. And then you know, the wings, we typically do wings that some of the staff want to get creative with. And you know, one of the most unique ones we've done in the past is a peanut butter and jelly wing. And one of our kitchen manager at the time, Sam, came up with it. And I was like, what are you smoking on, you know, to come up with that? But it is really good. And we did peanut butter on the wings, and then she created this strawberry habanero jelly that goes with it. So I'd say what separates us is creativeness. We do some things different, but then we also take a lot of pride in just like our pepperoni pizza. And we use high quality product. We have really good staff in the kitchen that have been with us a long time. Trinidad, who is kind of our kitchen manager of both of our kitchens, he oversees both. You know, he started out with us as just like an appetizer maker, but he's put so much heart and soul that we've promoted him to a position to where he gets to see the quality over both kitchens, and like he cares. And you know, I challenge him with creativeness on pizzas and wings. So I mean, for me personally, like that's the most rewarding part of the job, is seeing people care and put their heart into this as well. Like that's the most rewarding part of this whole thing.
How's that cheap day pizza taste?
It's delicious. I try to stay away from it, but you know, I had to try it out when we kind of tweaked it a little bit. One of the staff members came up with it a few years ago, and then we tweaked it a little bit this year. But yeah, I mean, it's queso on, you know, fresh baked crust, which is kind of like a chip in itself, you know, and then sausage and jalapeno. So it works really well.
It sounds good.
Yeah,
Some of my favorite things on there.
Yeah.
That's cool that you guys have a partnership with Terry Black's too. So is it their brisket?
It's their brisket, their sauce, and then it's pickles and onions and mozzarella on there. So it's like a barbecue brisket sandwich on a pizza.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Haven't I been there yet?
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to Terry Black's. That was one of the first places we went when we moved here. But
yeah,
he got a new customer in Toss. I'm just gonna take your word for it that it's darn good.
Yeah, they are so good at what they do with brisket and their consistency, and you know how much volume they pump out. And we've been very grateful for their willingness to partner with us and you know, allow us to do this permanently on our menu. We did it initially as just a pie of the month. We wanted to do a brisket pizza, and so my plan when we opened Toss is, okay, I'm gonna get a smoker, I'm gonna put it out back, I'm gonna smoke briskets while opening the restaurant. We opened the restaurant and quickly learned I have no time to smoke brisket in the back of, like, while I'm trying to figure out running a restaurant that we newly opened. So but I really wanted to do a brisket pizza, so I emailed info at terryblacks.com, and Mark, who's one of the twins that's one of the owners at Terry Black's, emailed back, and he said, I was actually at Toss last week and had a great time. Love the concept. We were there for a birthday, and he was very complimentary on his experience. So he's like, yeah, let's try it and see how it goes. And I was like, I want to make sure that, you know, y'all's product is displayed well. Like, you know, we're putting in a 600-degree oven. And we tried it, and when we all looked at each other like, oh yeah, this works.
Yeah.
And it's one of our top sellers for sure.
Yeah, I would have to imagine that if you were cooking it yourself, that's got to add a whole nother. It's not a small thing. That's a whole nother dimension to do it right. You know, you have to be. Do you know KG Barbecue?
I've heard of them. Yep.
He put a video up on YouTube from one of the food magazines came through and asked if they could do a 20-minute segment on what a day in the life looks like. And I mean, that guy's out there at 4 a.m. getting the fire started, and it's a whole operation.
I mean, there's a reason why Austin specific barbecue is good, because the people do it right, and they take the time to do it. I mean, the guys at Terry Black's, I mean, they start in the wee hours of the morning, and it's a consistent thing every day to pump out the volume that they do. So much respect to them and the other purveyors, especially of barbecue, because there's a lot of people that do it right. La Barbecue is another one. Allie, who's a friend of mine over there, I mean, she works extremely hard to keep the consistency on what she does there.
Yeah.
And I have much respect for her. and her team as well.
Yeah. Well, we will circle back to Toss in a few minutes, but
Okay.
I wanted to take you back in time real quick
Okay.
and show you this picture from when you were in seventh grade.
Oh
I,
goodness.
I believe. Do you already know what I'm going to show you?
Possibly.
You remember this one?
Basketball picture. Okay. Yep.
That
Yep.
is you, right?
That is me. Yep.
What memories come back when you look at that picture?
I think that was one of my first years playing basketball. I never played organized basketball before sixth or seventh grade, and by my senior year, it was basketball was my life, and I was talented because I worked very hard at it. I was one of the best ones in my class and in the district, and there was actually a thought to play college basketball, and I had an opportunity at the time when I left high school with a tryout at University of Texas with Coach Tom Penders, but timing didn't work out as well. He lost his job the year I graduated, and Coach Barnes came in, and once Coach Barnes came in, it was a different level of athlete playing at the University of Texas. But yeah, basketball was my life for a long time, and it was there was a part of me that actually, especially in high school, that thought that coaching would be my future. Coaching kids, that was something that I enjoyed doing even at a high school level. I would referee, and I enjoyed teaching little kids, younger children, the sport and the skill sets that went along with it. After my freshman year in college, I went and worked in Reno, Nevada at Jam On It Academy. It was an academy there that it was basketball morning, all day and night, and with kids that were, committed to the sport. Worked with a lot of the other people that worked there were Division I players, and I enjoyed it. We were up at 6 a.m. training and developing kids, and I think there's something to sports that I think teaches a lot of character with kids, and self discipline, and you kind of learn like there's results in hard work, and competition, and that was I'd say basketball was a big part of my life for a long time. That picture you just showed was kind of the beginning of it. It was a start of being on the B team in sixth and seventh grade, and then putting in the work um, to to be one of the better players in that area and excel and and be successful. So I think in reflection, it's probably one of the first things I can look back on, and seeing where you learn like the hard work you put in is where you get the results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something that comes on the other side of just accomplishing something yourself that's
Yeah.
so important, whether it's going to the gym, sports, or even like playing an instrument, or seeing that skill get better and better, and honing that over time. That there's just no other feeling like it,
Yeah.
because there's a sense of like pride and ownership. Or
Yeah.
like, wow, used to never be able to make that shot,
Yeah.
and I just hit it 3 times in a row without even trying.
Yeah. And that actually brought up the thought of my youngest son, who's 8, started playing baseball just 4 or 5 months ago, and like the work he put in at 8 years old, and how much he developed over one season. By the end of the season, how well he was doing out on the field and hitting the ball, and seeing the joy in his face, and that was really rewarding as a father, and to see the reward for him to feel that. And in sports, there's also, you take losses and you learn to overcome challenges, and seeing that with him and his development with that, gave me some reflection of that competitiveness that I had in sports, and the lessons I learned. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you play a couple of different sports before you found out that basketball was your one, or how were you able to hone in on basketball?
Baseball was. I started playing baseball when I was 3. Football as well. Once got to age, and I grew up in South Texas, and football is life. A lot down there. We had a very good team in my class. A lot of good close friends played, and I think the 2 years we were there, at least my senior year, we were state semifinalists. But I didn't play football my senior year, or after sophomore year. I had committed fully to basketball, um, and yeah. But baseball, basketball, and football were sports I played growing up.
What part of South Texas were you in?
Alice, small town, kind of near Corpus Christi.
How many people there? You remember?
About 20,000. Yeah,
What was that like growing up in a small town?
that's all I know. I'd say I enjoyed it. We had a close group of friends growing up. I'm still close with some of them now. Very blue collar. I think there's a lot of good qualities that I would say that I'm proud to have because of how I grew up, and my family down there, and just the hard work that everybody put in down there. I've talked to a good close friend of mine, and we agreed. It's like, man, we reflected and realized, everybody that comes out of here has a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, and I think there's ways to make that as a positive thing and a way to make an impact in the world with that chip, and it drives you to do things in a positive way. But as we reflect, it's like, man, I think we all have that chip in some way. And I don't know necessarily what that's from. But ultimately, I think it's just from that community down there is very hardworking, very blue collar. There was a oil industry, so a lot of people worked in the oil fields, which is a very demanding, hard physical job. And I think that was instilled from a young age to all of us down there, that you work hard to get what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have siblings growing up?
Only child.
Only child.
Yep.
And with your friends that you mentioned, how'd you make those friends, and what would you do to keep them around?
Oh, so Kyle, who I referred to in that conversation, one of my close friends growing up. We knew each other since elementary school, and we grew up, and there was a time period there where we disconnected once we got out of high school. He went to the military. I moved here to Austin, and it was probably about 8 years gap of us really not connecting, and then we connected again, and it was like we had never been apart as friends. So I think we all grew up similarly down there, economically similarly, as well as we experienced a lot. We got out, we hung out, we got out and had ranch parties. And for those that grew up in areas like that, know what that is, right? We just back up with trucks, sit on the back of the trucks, and out in someone's ranch, and be out in nature, and just hanging out. And we connected. I think we had opportunities to connect because of the size of the town we grew up in. And I think when you have those opportunities to connect, even if it is just sitting in the back of a truck and staring up at the stars, and hanging out, and experiencing life at that age together, and I think that connection creates bonds that are important and are valuable and are meaningful.
Yeah, we used to be a relatively big camping family.
Yeah.
And we'd go 2 or 3 times a summer, and sometimes it was just the immediate family. Other times it'd be bigger groups where we'd invite friends who we knew had camping equipment, and they'd enjoy getting along. And some of my favorite memories from those trips, or some of the only aspects of those trips that I remember, was at nighttime. It was the end of the day after we did whatever we did, hiking,
Right.
swimming in the lake. We'd build a big old fire,
Yep.
and it was midnight, and we'd just be talking and
Yeah.
laughing and telling stories,
Yeah.
and just talking about nothing. But
Yeah.
like it's almost like a magical thing for some reason. I
It
don't know
is,
why.
yeah.
But
I believe that the connection and that time of just being still for a little bit, and just connecting with others, and feeding off each other's energy. I recently went camping with my family and my boys, and my oldest son and I kind of stayed up late around the fire, and we just listened to some music. I had him, and we'd never really got to spend that time together. So And just recently he was like, I want to go camping again. I'm like, yeah, that's,
Yeah.
I think inherently our nature inside of us, like we want that and we need that kind of time out in nature, especially with all the distractions we have in our culture, in our world, that I think disconnect us from those times. I think, purposefully going in those types of atmospheres and environments it's refreshing. It's refueling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I went home for Thanksgiving on my last day in town, my alarm went off that morning and got up and greeted the family and just told them like, "Hey, for the rest of the day, I'm not gonna have my phone on me
Yeah.
because I want you guys to know just like it's our last
Yeah.
day and I'm gonna
Yeah.
miss you guys." My one of my sisters was like, "You know what? That's a good idea. Let me answer one text. I'm gonna throw my phone in the bedroom too." And then my other sister's like, fine, I'll do it too. And dude, we had a whole from like 8 a.m. to probably whenever we went to bed that night, 9, 10 o'clock, where we
Yeah.
didn't have our phones, and it made me want to do it more often.
Yeah.
Like it feels it's right here
Yeah.
24/7, and there's so many push notifications going off, and I love my phone.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sit here and bash it. It's a
Yeah.
great device. But also, when you can get away, when you know you don't have any calls to take and you can disconnect, even if it's for like 4 hours or 2 hours,
Yeah.
like, and then you couple that with you're spending time with some of your favorite people in the world,
Yeah.
it's great.
Well, I think that's like the ultimate like show of respect and love for someone else, is to be fully present. And we can get really distracted because it's so easy. I mean, that's what so many of the things that are on our phone are literally there for, is to distract us, whether it be ads or social media. Like it's designed to distract us. And I think one of the most valuable things we can give to those we love, our friends, our family, is presence, and to shut those things off and to have those deeper conversations and to make those deeper connections. To me, I think we're missing that a lot
Yeah.
with humanity, and to really be grateful for those times that we get that presence with others. And what a great realization is, like, you know what, I'm going to do this and give this time to my family. Like that's a really admirable thing to do. I try to have those moments more and more, but it's hard. It's challenging. It's hard, but having that awareness is really good. It's
Yeah.
the start of it.
Especially as a business owner, I
Yeah.
bet there's a side of you where you're like, these are also two of my babies in
Yeah.
a way, and
So
it
much.
could be hard for you to disconnect for
Yep.
an entire 24 hours or
Yep.
whatever the duration of time is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's been a big, for me personally, especially with two kids,
Yeah.
and two restaurant locations and a lot of staff at both of them, and to be able to find, what we all want to find, this balance, right, of work and home life. And that's been a journey, in itself for me, and trying to find that balance, and more of finding like a harmony of, all right, there's times where work may be more demanding, and there's also time I'm going to commit to my kids or family,
Yeah.
that I'm shutting that off and I'm giving the reins to somebody else for a period of time. And hey guys, it's you, and I trust that you'll make the right decisions, and I'm going to be here doing this. Or maybe this week is like, hey, there's something going on at the restaurant. I want to make sure that I've got my full focus there, and trying to find that. And I think the word balance, I stay away from that, because I think balance is you're trying to even things out perfectly and balance it. But in reality, I think there's times where certain things may need more attention. And so harmony is more the word that I focus on, and knowing that harmony can be like, okay, some more attention needs to go to one place than the other, and knowing that it can do this and you can still be in harmony.
Yeah.
Where you're putting focus in one area for a period of time and focus in another for a period of time, and understanding that to try to be at this perfect balance at every moment, it's just that's not possible.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So when you were graduating high school and you decided not to play college ball, did you have any kind of like moment of crisis, or do you recall what was going through your head as you graduated high school and how to make that big decision of like, what do I do with my life?
No, I was still such a kid. I mean, coming to Austin, I almost ended up in College Station. I remember having the application on the counter and realizing that, I remember sitting down in my senior year and having breakfast one morning and realizing I did not send off the application for to College Station to go to A&M, where a lot of my friends were going, and uh, I did send off the University of Texas one, but the purpose was to send off both with the thought of, well, I have a lot of friends going there, not really knowing what I wanted to do, just knowing, at that time, I think it was so instilled like it's high school and then college is the next step. Where my perspective on that is maybe changed a little bit on a path, but back then that's what it was: just go to college after high school, and like that's what you're supposed to do. That's what you do. So ended up getting accepted to University of Texas. I had applied to the business school and then in the engineering school. The business school was full, so I got in engineering. So I started out in engineering. Math has always been a strong point for me. After a year and a half in engineering at University of Texas, also, Austin was not near as big as it was then as it is now, but it was still a big place compared to Alice, Texas. So it was still there was a big adjustment there, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed meeting people, and experiencing different cultures at the university. But it still felt like a small city, and it always has, even now. I think just with the network in town that I know. Um, but yeah, it was just I started out in engineering, and then quickly was like I want to do something where I work with people more. Engineering just didn't feel like a route, so started into the business world. Sort of like a route to business, at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was ended up being an accounting major, and I did that. I only lasted 3 years, and I remember being at my desk in my cubicle one night. It's 2 a.m. in the morning. I'm staring at this Excel spreadsheet and
Yeah.
just thinking like, this is not this is
Yeah.
not the dream that
Yeah.
I thought it
I
was gonna
think
be.
I think I had a similar moment when I think it was my freshman year. I was taking like engineering calculus 2, and it's just like I can do this stuff, but this is just doesn't seem interesting. Like I wasn't having a good time, and there was a realization of I don't know if I just want to crunch numbers like this. Like this is not what I want to do. So yeah, I think college for me was more of a very much a socialization time. I joined a fraternity. I became like the social chair of that fraternity. I met some friends that are lifelong friends. In that fraternity, and met also other people outside of that are still my close friends now. So I think it was a time of being on my own, but still kind of like wide eyed and like, whoa, wow, like in awe, and just taking in things and trying to enjoying life at the time. Socialized quite a bit, was out quite a bit, at the time, and but also met so many people that I cherish and I value being in my life, and yeah, so it's a time, and no, not really a thought of like, oh, this is what I want to do. It was more of like this socializing, meeting people, and there were things in school that piqued interest, but it was never this hard line like, all right, this is the occupation I want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you in growing up in like your teen years and early college days, did you find yourself leaning more introverted or extroverted? Or were you always did it sort of depend on the context of what group you were with?
Yeah, yeah, it really depended. I'd say if you talk to people that I was around back then, they'd probably say extroverted. But there was times I could reflect that I knew I was introverted, and I would be on my own. But then I also love being around people, and I think I've come to more understanding of extroverted, introverted, that we all have aspects of both,
Mm-hmm.
and it really depends what we're most comfortable in. Introverts, people that we typically view as introverts in the world, when they're around people they know and they're comfortable with, they're the most extroverted.
Yes.
And sometimes those that are perceived as extroverts are extroverted, and they can walk into a room of people they don't know and they seem extroverted, but maybe when they're around people they know, or they do like to be by themselves. They do have an introverted side as well. So yeah, I think I floated kind of in the middle of that a lot, where I would be extroverted and I could be at times, but there was definitely other times where I was more closed off and not as comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You enjoy ACL, right?
I do. I love ACL. Yeah,
That
love music.
you've been a lot of times.
Yep.
That was probably my biggest takeaway from
Yeah,
your Instagram. This guy loves live music,
I do. Yeah.
and it's funny because to your point of like where those different aspects of us come out. Some friends twisted my arm into going to ACL my first year in Austin,
Yeah.
and so I went, and I was so uncomfortable, and I just thought I never want to be at a music festival again.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been to enough of these. I'm definitely much more of a, if someone's like, let's go to Anton's, or
Yeah.
some venue where
Yeah,
it's like
love
50
Anton's.
people,
Yep.
100 people. That's my where David really enjoys himself. But even just they really wanted to see Hosier.
Yep.
And so we got pretty close to the front, and I remember even just turning around and seeing how many people there were. They're like, man, if I have to even use the bathroom, like this is going to be a war to
Yeah.
get to the bath. And that's just me. I know other people love ACL. They will be there every year, all
Yep.
3 days. It's the highlight of their year, and whatnot. Just not my thing.
Yeah, understandable. Yeah, I think for me, it's at the core of it. It's music, and I'm a huge fan of music. So my business partner in Toss is Jace Pirtle, who's also one of my closest friends, and he's always been my ears on the ground when it comes to music. Like he just has this knack to hear music and know, like he has a knack for knowing good music, and especially music that'll take off. So him and I used to do South by Southwest every year when it was, I mean, gosh, we're probably talking 15 years ago. And we would go, we'd get the local passes, and we'd go stand in line, and he would have a list of people like, all right, we got to see this person, this person, this person, most of them unknown at the time. And it was pretty consistent that most of those people became pretty well known within a few years. So we'd see artists in tiny places that then would be huge artists years later, from Kendrick Lamar to Leon Bridges to Monsters of Men. I mean, the list could go on forever in these tiny venues that we saw them in. But yeah, I think for me, music is. It just has this energy. It just has this. It's like therapeutic in a way, and it's always been something that I've appreciated so much. I've envied so many artists. I'm friends with some musicians, and to get to see them like express themselves through their music and their instruments is I envy it, but I appreciate them and respect them so much. And when I was, I think 21, 22, we would go out and we went to this place. It was a scrap bar, I think it was the name of it. And we used to go see this guy play blues at the time. And we're like, man, this is just amazing music. There'd be like 3 or 4 of us in there. And it was Gary Clark Jr. It was when he first started here. And just to see someone, even when I think he was 19 at the time, and that to express themselves through the music is just something I've appreciated for a long time. And, and ACL has changed a lot. It is way bigger.
So big.
It's so big. And this was actually, I did not go this past year. I had some things come up that I traveled a little bit during that time, and I didn't get to make it. But it was the first year I didn't get to go. But I think ultimately, like, the music for me is, and even in those big shows, I think, there's just an energy that comes from the music and can feed a crowd.
Yes.
I saw the videos of, what's her name? She was here this past year, and she had huge crowds. I'm brain farting on
What was
the
it? Pink, was it?
No, not Pink. It was female, red hair. She Hot to Go song. Oh my God, I'm gonna get
Let's see if
criticized
we
for
can
not knowing
find
this.
this real quick. It was last year, 2024.
Yeah. I'm just brain farting right now on the artist.
Dua Lipa,
No,
Chappelle Roan.
Chappelle Roan. Yes. Seeing the video, I mean, the crowds were crazy huge, but to see the energy from that crowd, like it felt magical. Like just everybody like connected through the music. Like I love that part of it.
Yeah.
And that to me is what makes music so special and what like draws me to music so much.
Yeah, I think our conclusion in this episode so far is get outside more and get to more music,
Yeah.
more bonfires and more concerts.
Yeah.
I make a joke to my friends that my real resentment against ACL is that it shuts down Zilker for so long
That's
because I
fair.
really like taking Thad out there. He
Yeah.
he gets to see 20, 30, 40 other dogs, and I get a very big amount of joy seeing him play with other animals.
Yeah.
Maybe it just is the joy of like being able to see this creature in his natural habitat with
Yeah.
his other canine friends. But man, ACL, like as much as the city loves it, I'm like,
Yeah.
could we do it somewhere else? Could we keep it, but just like go anywhere else? Where's
Yeah.
the next biggest plot of land
Yeah.
in Austin, Texas? But
That's fair.
yeah.
What's up, bud?
Oh,
Why?
who's your current favorite artist or favorite song right now?
Whew. Oh man, that's a deep question right now. Um, I mean, so I mentioned Kendrick Lamar, so Kendrick Lamar is definitely up there from a hip hop perspective. Um, yeah, I'll stick with that. I've started listening to kind of different music, so I've kind of been on a different swing than like big artists. But yeah, I'd say Kendrick Lamar just came out with a recent album that he puts out pretty powerful stuff, and
Yeah.
the lyrics are strong and um, very intellectual, and I always appreciate the lyrical side of things, regardless of what kind of music it is, the thought put behind it. So yeah,
Yeah. I have a buddy he's in a band, and uh, he was like, I don't even know outside of like our stuff who you listen to, and so we both started rattling off some of our favorite songs and artists, and it was hilarious how opposite our taste in music was. Like he had heard of most of mine. He's pretty familiar with music, being an artist.
yeah,
Some of like his favorite stuff, I was like, dude, I have no idea who that
yeah.
is, and then he'd play me like 30 seconds. I'd be like, no, turn that off.
I'm pretty open. I got all genres, from country to hip hop to, I mean, from classic. There'll be times looking at classical, spiritual. I mean, yeah, all kinds.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I did also take away from your Instagram that you like to travel.
I tried to. It's been a while, but yeah, I tried to.
Where's that itch come from?
Um, I don't know. Like, I mean, I think just having different experiences, I think is something I desire. I like to try to experience different cultures. Although I'm not like worldly traveled by any means at all. But even in the United States, I think we have different cultures and different cities. So from New Orleans to California, Florida. There's just different cultures, and it's interesting to see and to feel that. So, Costa Rica was a great place as well. Um, yeah, I think getting out and seeing how much, regardless of where we're at, and you can see the things that bring us together are all pretty similar, and then getting to experience, even if it's short periods of time, what people find in their environments to connect with each other. Like there's a desire in that, and I enjoy that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you have a favorite place that you visited yet? Or
I'd say Costa Rica. That's somewhere I'd like to go back. I've been there once, and I feel like there's still so much more to explore. And we experience the beaches, we experience the jungle, and the people there, and yeah, I'd say that's probably at the top of the list if I were to say like, all right, where do I want to go to? That's somewhere that I've been. Peru is another place that's kind of on my list, to want to experience. I think there's just a rich history there from the indigenous people that have lived there, and just the traditions that are there that interest me from that level. And so that's also at the top of my list of somewhere that I haven't been.
yeah.
Yeah.
When we were on the phone, I'm going to change subjects here a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit.
no worries.
When we were on the phone, we talked a lot about how we both think we both value the relationships we have with other men in our lives. We
Yeah.
talked about leadership and working out, and how we talked about a lot in
Yeah,
a
yeah.
really short phone call. What sort of happened? At what point of your life do you think you started to value some of these things? And was
Yeah.
there anything that you sort of went through to either like realize you needed more, not more, but like wanted deeper relationships with some of your male
Yeah.
counterparts, or how did you sort of lead up to the mindset point of your life that you're at
Yeah.
today?
Thank you for that question. Yeah. I think it was, you know, we South First Toss has been open for 8.5 years. So those first few years of the restaurant, um, I tell people when I reflect on it now is the first 2.5 years, I had one day off, and that was when my second son was born. I had that day off, and then I was back to work the next day. So for a very long time, that was the focus of life was a restaurant. And when I talk about balance and harmony, there was no balance and harmony then. And thankful for Tiffany, my wife, to hold down the fort with two boys. My oldest son was 2 when we opened Toss, and so there I really wasn't present as a father as I would have preferred to be. Looking back on it, during that time. And even myself, I grew up with my mom without a father, so not really knowing how to be the best father, not having a representation of how to be a really good father for my boy. So wanting to understand that and dig into that, and I'd say probably about a little over a year ago where I started to reflect on that more, and what I wanted to be for them, and peeling back the layers of myself in order to do that, and understanding my triggers, understanding what was important to me, and understanding what it really meant to be in alignment with myself, and taking action on those things that were in alignment with myself, and that being just a different perspective than it ever was before, and being able to spend time with them. And then also I have found, I'm part of like a men's group now. We sit and we have intentional conversation about, the demands of being entrepreneurs or men in this society, and also the importance of being a heart-led man in this society, and how a lot of things are not structured around that, and how important I feel that is to lead with our hearts and to lead with love. And we can do that as men from a vulnerable place where I think we've been conditioned in a lot of ways to shut that part down in us. And I have felt that there's been a big need in humanity, for humanity, to come from a different place as a man and as a male, and what masculine means in this current world. And that can be villainized at times, and I think there is a healthy masculine presence that's needed for humanity, and I think that's a heart-led man, and I think that takes reflection from other men, and from because I think there's a lot of growth to be had with those conversations, and with that accountability, and with that love being shared, and that vulnerability. I think we as men want to show strength, and I think the most strength we can find and show is from a place of being okay with being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard.
It is. Yeah, I had a buddy I kept pressing to come onto the podcast for probably about a year and a half, and he finally came on, and we ended up talking for a little over 3 hours. And afterwards, he was just like, "Dude, I feel like a million times better,
Yeah.
just because I never talk about this stuff with anyone,
Yeah.
and I always just sort of keep it in my head, and it's stuff I think about more often than not."
Right.
But at the same time, sort of circling back to the conversation we had earlier, my follow up question to him was like, well, when was the last time you sat down with one of your guy friends and you both put your phones away and you just
Yeah.
talked with, no one, with nothing to rush to afterwards? And he's
Yeah.
like, well, never. It's whenever I see people, it's usually in a group and
Yeah.
it's usually focused around some sort of activity. And
Yep.
so the time, he said the half the stuff we talked about was because we did have 3 hours. And so because we're so on the go, whether it's taking a boat out on the lake or going, just whatever it is, like, if you don't, I just have never created that 3 hour gap
Yeah.
just to connect with my buddies,
Yeah.
and maybe I should.
Yeah. I think it's important. I know I heard somewhere on some, it was probably a podcast or something recently, is, we, in our society today, we put so much pressure, especially in like relationships with like one singular other person, to be the support for everything that we may need as a human, and that's a lot of pressure for one other person. I do believe like it is almost necessary to have, for males and females to have close friends to get different kind of energy from, and other type of supportive energy from, rather than just having that need to come from one singular person, whether it's from a husband to a wife, one male to a female, or a female to a male, is to have kind of a masculine support system, and then to also have a feminine support system. I think that's where we get the most value in relationships, and where we can get the most growth, and that we don't put so much pressure on one singular relationship in our life. And I think that actually allows that one fully committed relationship to blossom even more when there is that support outside of it.
Did Alex happen to tell you about the event that he threw last either September or October called Open Spaces?
I've heard of it, yeah, and ironically, he is hosting I believe another one in February with someone that I know separately, and
Okay.
I just saw that a couple of days ago, so I'm excited to go join.
Are
And
you going to go?
I am gonna go, yeah.
I'll see you
So,
there.
oh, nice, yeah. So Laura is a good friend of mine, a partner, and I've met them, and she's really good people, and I have not dove in the depths of these types of conversation with Laura or with Alex, and I feel like that's due almost.
Yeah.
Like we know we have some, there's a connection and thought patterns and of purpose, and I think that there'll be some collaboration or just coming together, whether it be conversation or something.
Yeah, it'll be cool for
Yeah.
the audience. What it is Alex and what's his partner's name?
Kate.
Kate, thank you.
Yep.
Alex and Kate basically are playing around with this idea of having an open space where they bring in a guest speaker, and they had like an icebreaker game set up at the first one where the 35-ish people that were there broke out into groups of three, and we had about 30 to 40 minutes where they had pre-made questions for us to ask each other.
Cool.
And then the guest speaker spoke for about 20 minutes. Alex and Kate then had a couple of follow-up questions for her. And then my favorite part is we all went into their backyard and we all had dinner together, and
Heck
we
yeah.
just sat around and talked
love
for
it.
like 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
And so they might change. I think he said they were going to play around with the format and the icebreakers a little bit, but just the idea in general of, hey,
Yeah.
once every 3 months, we are going to get 30 to 40 of our friends together, and we're going to have a meal and then do some other activities, introduce some strangers to each other who we all know are maybe have some differences, but also similarities,
Yeah.
and sort of see what happens. I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
this is so
I
cool.
love it.
We need this.
Yeah, I love it. We're in that reminded me. I was at the gym today, and a few months back, we kind of we threw together like a little guys dinner from guys at the gym. We're like, hey, let's just go have dinner, and so we got together and we had just sat around, enjoyed dinner, and just had conversation, and it was very fruitful. And one of the guys was like, man, we need to do another dinner. So I was like, you know what, I'll put it together.
Yeah.
Next week we'll do it, because I see the value in it so much, and I could see it in the people's eyes that brought it up, like they want it. And I think, coming together for, intentional, positive connection, is so fulfilling and so rewarding, and is so needed. I think just from a general statement, I think our society can be so disconnected and it can be very toxic. But at the same time, there's so many good people that I think there's a lot of good in our society as well. And if we just look at the media and social media, that's not what we see. But if we look collectively in our communities, there's so much positive. And I think it's on us to be the ones to spread that positivity and to cultivate it and bring more of that connectedness, because I think that's where it can just grow and grow and grow as people like, hey, this is really rewarding. And then, it's just something that more people are doing and doing. And I think the more we collaborate as humans, the more like we can, maybe I don't know what the word is, heal, as a society, but I do believe there is some healing to be had with our society and our culture. And I think the more we get connected and have these events like Alex and Kate are doing, and dinners, whether it's just hey, what's up, guys? Let's get together. Like, why don't we go, just go have dinner and then go hang out afterwards, and then having this intentional, conversations and just check-ins and seeing how people are, and just connecting in positive ways, and get away from all the media and the things, the negativity that's out there, and connect on these personal levels. I think there's a lot of value that can come from that in our relationships, but I think in society as a whole.
Yeah. If you're listening, maybe that can be a challenge from this episode, because I think that's a pretty easy challenge.
Yeah.
Just think of like who are 4 to 10 people that you just enjoy their company.
Yeah.
Put together a dinner. You don't even have to make it. You can go somewhere if you want.
Yeah.
Put all the work on the restaurant. Go to Toss
Yeah,
if you're
come
here
to Toss.
in Austin.
It was a selfless plug there.
Yeah.
I think, and have some fun with it. What I liked about what you said that Alex and Kate do is there's some organization of it, right? Just with like, hey, write some questions down.
Yep.
And you get some friends together and like, you can chat GPT. You can use some technology. What are some good questions to have with personal friends, and have some questions that ignite conversation around certain things, some fun conversation that's maybe some deeper conversation than you've had with like close friends. And I think that could be a fun way to do it.
Yeah. When the podcast first started, I bought this it's called a game, but it's called Where Shall We Begin? And it's 3 or 400 cards with just questions on them. And the idea is that you bring it on a first date, and it's, you give the person you're with 20 of the cards, and you have 20, and you pick like your top however many you want to ask. But there's a lot of questions in there I ended up stealing for the podcast in the early days, just because they were really thoughtful, and I thought, this one's making me think. It might make whoever I'm sitting across from think too. So you don't have to go spend money to find good questions,
right.
But if you do have 20 extra bucks and you want to support someone who I think she's a therapist and she's doing a lot of good things in the world.
Cool.
Where Shall We Begin is a great game to buy.
Cool.
Yeah. Where was your dad when you were growing up?
I grew up without my dad, so just my mom. Never knew him at all.
No idea who he is, where he is,
Nope.
anything? If he reached out, would you take that phone call?
I've since learned as I grew up that he passed away when I was 18.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's something that I've processed and understood and have grown from. But I think we all have things that we grow from, and there's things in our life that can be challenging, and for a long time I never thought it was. I grew up without a father, but I had so much loving family around. So, for so long, I was like, no, that doesn't affect me at all, And then, I'd say in the past like year and a half, I've dug into that a little more and just understood how that's affected me, and then brought awareness around that to have further growth. So, yeah.
When you found out he passed away, did that have an impact on you?
Oh man, I think I was like 23 when I found that out. 24. It wasn't like a big emotional thing, but I think that was part of the wall that I probably put up at the time and growing up that way. I think there was think there was an absence there without understanding there was an absence there because I did have so much around me. And in reflecting, I've seen some of the things like even with sports and how dedicated I was with sports, and the attention I really enjoyed with sports was, probably for some validation that, I wasn't getting with having a father around. But I think that's what we do, right? We adapt in ways subconsciously to fulfill our natural things that we want, growing up, and attention and recognition. And yeah, my mom is a single mom growing up, and she worked her tail off, and there was so much I learned, from her. And I'm very grateful for everything that she gave me and instilled in me. And I wouldn't have been my grandmother as well. My grandmother, her husband and my mom's dad passed away when my mom was 7. So that in itself, another like tragedy that my mom had to go through, and then my grandmother had to deal with in raising 3, my mom and her 2 sisters, and then my mom raising me on my own. So like I have a lot of respect and for strong women, and that's something that I'm proud to have instilled in me, and as I've grown into the man that I am and continue to work on all the
Yeah.
time. It's a continued path of growth.
Do you have anyone today that you look up to, whether it's someone that's in your life or someone from afar who you've never even met, but maybe they're more of a public figure of some sort? Anyone you look up to
Ooh.
these days?
Um, I read more. No, so there's you know I would say recently, like Gabor Mate is one that I enjoy reading a lot. Of his, he's a psychologist, and of his thought process, and and his observation, and how things work. And it comes from a place of love and understanding self and understanding others, and how helping others. I think he's got a really good perspective on that. He's got several books and things out. Yeah, I think there's I'd say Carl Jung is one that his work and his ideas, I think, have influenced a lot of people in the coaching and therapy world that I tend to navigate towards, in his writings, and his way to be introspective and understanding ourselves. I think we all at some point try to understand ourselves in deeper ways, and I think he's one that's given a good structure to that.
Nice. I think my last question around sort of mindset and whatnot. You tried breathwork.
Yeah.
Why did you try it? I think I know the answer to this, but who got you involved, and what was your takeaway from your first session?
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, because that has been something that I've been fortunate to experience. The first time I experienced it was about last March, and it came from suggested by some friends that were kind of in a space of like self-reflection, and ways that they have felt some growth. So yeah, JJ Rescus, shout out to JJ. He's a breathwork guy here in town, facilitator. I mean, he's
Yeah.
much more than that. I mean, I think he'll label himself an optimization specialist, human optimization
Yes.
specialist, which he is. Great guy, great person. And yeah, so I went and did my first breathwork class, not really knowing what to expect, and coming from a place of I go to the gym, I work out. I started working out pretty consistently at On It about 4.5 years ago, which I think was a big part of my life and my growth as a person, and it was a big part of being in the restaurant world, during COVID, and On It was a big part of that. But where breathwork kind of came in was, I didn't know what it was, so I thought I was going to kind of a workout with breath, and I didn't really know what it was going to be at all. Where I have more of an understanding now, where really it's you're utilizing the breath to ramp up the nervous system to then bring down the nervous system, essentially to help regulate the nervous system. So yeah, remember the first time I did that, I was like, whoa, what was that? It felt like an experience, like being on a substance of some sort, but you're not. You're just using your breath to get into this state, this mental state, and did that. I found that was very helpful just in grounding. I think that's really where it's beneficial. There's stresses of business, life in general. I think we all have stress on us, and being able to ground and to get our nervous system back to a state of being grounded helps us in decision making, and helps our mind be in a good place. Helps our spirit be in a good place, and so that was something that was really helpful for me, and got to a point where I was like, man, I'd really like to introduce this to other people other than just inviting them. And so, yeah, about a month ago, I ended up getting facilitator certified through Soma IQ here in Austin. Nice. With Fish Fisher and his company and Jagger, and those guys are doing really good things with breathwork and spreading that around and how it can help people. And I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I had a friend named Dalton Daniel who is into breath work, and he goes, I haven't talked with him in a few months, but he was going pretty regularly, I think two to three times a month, and he invited me out to a session, and that's how me and Alex met. And I had no idea what to expect.
Yeah,
I sort of just, you can sort of make some assumptions based off the title, right. Like, we're going to go do some breath work, maybe like something yoga-ish. And then JJ, it was one of his classes, and he had invited Alex, and they did something different where they had all of us stand up, walk around the room in any direction we wanted, and specifically had to be facing the ground. And then when Alex said to stop, you look up and you make eye contact with whoever you happen to be in front of, and you kept that eye contact for about 90 seconds while Alex read through a sort of a story of, imagine the person in front of you when they're first being born and they're first beginning to walk and they're smelling things for the first time. And then we repeated the process 2 more times, and the second story was sort of more around the middle of their life and as they're going through, both the good and the bad and everything in between.
Yeah.
And then the third time, the story was sort of about the conclusion of life and death and what we hope to get out of life. And man, I got to tell you, if I had known that was going to happen, I probably wouldn't have gone.
Yeah,
it can
put people in vulnerable states, but it's also, I think it's a way to release some things that we keep in. I do believe like we hold on to things in our body, and I think there is a way to release those things. Epigenetics is something that I do believe in. I think when we carry stressors and we don't release things, we don't process things, I think that can then cultivate into sickness. It can cultivate into medical conditions, if we are not emotionally taking care of ourselves. And breath work can help regulate the nervous system in ways and help release some of those negative energies that have stored up in us and that we compartmentalize and we avoid. So yeah, it's like you said, it's scary because sometimes emotions come up that maybe have been buried there for a while. But I do feel it's important to get those things up and not out, just a different relationship with them.
Yeah. No, it is for sure. Well, as we wrap things up here over the next 10, 20, 30 minutes, to the audience real quick, I want to give you guys a huge thank you as always for tuning in. I really appreciate it. If you haven't yet, only about 15 to 20% of the audience has taken the time to stop on by Spotify and give the podcast a 5-star review. Same for Apple Podcasts, and then subscribe to the YouTube channel. And for the small group of you that have done this for me already, the podcast has got into places I never imagined it would go in the first year and a half. So imagine if even just like another 5 to 10% of you took 3 to 5 minutes out of your day to go do this favor for me. You would have my utmost gratitude, and I promise that if you do this for me, I'll continue to find awesome guests like Justin to talk about entrepreneurship and mindset and all the other things that we discuss on this podcast. So as we wrap this thing up over the next few minutes, if you could go leave those reviews for me, you would have my gratitude. And Justin, to you, thank you for being here.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
I appreciate the invite, for sure.
Yeah, of course. Couple questions on the restaurant industry as we wrap things up.
Absolutely.
So just 3 days ago, someone sent me an article that they thought I would find interesting. And it was basically talking about how mid-tier restaurants. So if you take out fast food, and then if you take out fine dining, so all the restaurants in the middle where you're probably paying anywhere from like $15 to $40 for a meal, give or take. Those restaurants in 2024 are reporting anywhere from a 1 to 4 dip in revenue, 1 to 4% dip in revenue compared to prior years. And they're not really bouncing back from COVID as much as they thought they would.
Yeah.
And as a result, they're either shutting down their businesses, or they are having to redo things on the menu, such as create specials and whatnot to try to get those customers to come back to the restaurant.
Yeah.
For you, since you were open pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and post-pandemic, are you also seeing that small dip in revenue compared to like 2019, 18, 17, or where do you sort of feel like your business is at today?
Yeah, I mean, our revenue has gone up, I'd say, year over year. However, the challenge is the expenses have gone up as well at a higher rate. The cost of doing business is much higher than it was early pandemic or pre-pandemic. So there is that need to tweak the business model in order to have profitability and sustainability. And it is challenging. I think, the restaurant industry as a whole is very challenging, and even more specifically, the restaurant industry in Austin, where the cost of living has gone up drastically, is even more challenging because, we want to be able to pay our staff a livable wage, and, the livable wage in Austin has gone up so much in the past 3 or 4 years. So I'd say that's the biggest challenge that we face as a restaurant, is finding that balance of, pricing the meals correctly, and then also being able to, ensure that our staff gets paid a livable wage, while also having enough people there that the experience is at the level that we want it to be at day in and day out. So, it's a challenge every day. It's a challenge every day. It's part of it now, for sure. I mean, I'd say that's probably the biggest challenge, not only for us as a restaurant, but probably most restaurants, is being able to pay the wages we want to pay our staff, and then still have a bottom line to be able to be an operational, successful restaurant. Because everything from the rent has gone up, considerably over the last few years. All the costs, the food, everything that goes along with running a restaurant has gone up. And then also people are a little bit more tight with their budget. So it's a challenge to raise the prices to offset all of those other raising prices, and then still expect to have the volume, that we would have had at that lower price point. So, yeah, getting creative. I think for us, it's being creative with menu. We've done some menu tweaks as well. For myself, I have taken, I'd say in the last 4 or 5 years, a healthier approach to life. So, trying to incorporate some of those things into the business as well. We've added some more protein-based salads, maybe some more things coming from that perspective as well in 2025. And especially in Austin, having healthy options even on a pizza menu. But, our product, if someone wants pizza, we have a high quality product. We don't use, low quality foods. We make a lot of all the product. We get fresh produce in almost every day. We're cutting onions that go on our pizza. We're making the sauces in house. So it's continuing to have that high quality, where I think that that has been what I've seen is the biggest effect out there of that reality is quality of food going down, the raising of prices on the back end of things, from trying to shift some of what maybe was spent on food costs onto labor costs, onto rent, and then there's that jeopardizes the cost, the value of food and the quality of food that's being put out by restaurants. So that's where I think the biggest obstacle is, and we've stayed committed to, we're going to keep the quality there. If we have to raise prices a bit, we'd rather raise prices a little to offset that versus use lesser quality, and still being vigilant about, all right, what options do we have from a high quality perspective? How can we get better pricing on things? As well as marketing and getting our name out there more. We've been around 8.5 years in South Austin, but there's still people I meet all the time. They're like, oh, I've never heard of Toss. So, in one hand, it's like, oh man, how have they never? But then the other hand, it's like, well, there's an opportunity still to market to people that haven't heard about us. So, it's a constant juggle of things. And, I was talking to someone earlier today about, continuously finding the joy in that, because it's hard, but also being so grateful to be in a position to have that challenge and finding joy in that challenge of like, okay, we need to figure this out, and then all right, we get to figure that out, and having that perspective and not coming from a place of scarcity of like, oh no, we have to figure that out. I'm like, well, we don't have to. We can go do something else. We can go get a job somewhere else and not do this. We have that choice. Or we take it on and we, attack it and have fun with that challenge.
Yeah, I found out about you through word of mouth. I don't know if did a barber named Phil Winfrey ever introduce himself to you?
I know that name. Where is he from? Where do you work at? Do you remember?
So he used to work at the Bearded Barber, and then him and a business partner opened their own very small salon and barbershop in Bee Cave. Called 3636 Salon and Barbershop.
Cool.
I think he met you, but I imagine you shake so many people's hands.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember.
And it's been a while since I've been to a barber, so
and
there was a time, yeah.
But he went, and a day or two after he went, he was like, I went in there to have him clean up my beard, and he said, "Have you ever heard of Toss?" And I said, "No, never heard of it." And he's like, "Dude, I don't know anything about the owners, but I'm pretty sure it's a local business, and I know you like to interview local business versus people of like big chains. Nothing against them, but I just love talking with local entrepreneurs. So I looked it up and saw there's 2 locations and sent you an invite and thought, what the heck? Let's invite the guy on and see if maybe he'll make an appearance.
Yeah.
But to that point, do you think word of mouth has been your biggest way that you guys grown, or is it something else?
I think it's a big part of it. It's a huge part of it. Since we've opened, the goal is always to have guests leave as an advocate for us. Exceptional service is the expectation with staff, and for them, for especially front of house staff, they primarily get their income from tips. So for me, it's like a partnership. I've always said that with front of house staff, especially, is how you directly treat someone is how you're going to be rewarded. And from a company perspective, our staff is the most important people that walk through the door, and that's the way it's always been. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to get out of the corporate world where I came from. Is like, once I started moving up and started going to headquarters and being around more of that corporate environment and that corporate leadership, it's like they just didn't care about the people on the front lines. And I had started out on the front lines. I'd been that person, and I work with them. I would work with them directly, and so that was part of the drive to start my own business. Was like, the culture is one of the most important things, and that's, the most important people are the people that work for you. I always say, like, we're in the people business before we're in the pizza business, 100%.
Yeah.
Like, there's no pizza business without the right people.
Yep.
And the right people are enjoying what they do. And they enjoy interacting with people. They enjoy serving people, and it's word of mouth is a huge part of that. It's one of the bigger ways that we grow, and the best way to do that is just have exceptional service, and what that looks like is just like be genuine with people and want to take care of them, ensure our food quality is high, and ensure our guest experience is high, and ensure our staff is happy with working for us, and that because of the financial burden of living in Austin, like that can be a challenge at times. And like one thing we do is we guarantee a minimum tip out for people so they know when they're coming,
Ah,
even if it's slow, like you're getting this minimal amount, and it's a pretty sizable amount, I would say.
heck yeah.
So they know, hey, I'm working at least 5-6 hours. I'm making this amount of money, regardless if it's slow or not. It's our job to make sure people are getting there by our marketing and events we put on, and things like that. So, yeah, it's ensuring that our people are happy, and taking care of them so that they take care of the people that walk through the door, which then tell other people. So to hear, you met somebody that had a great experience, and sound like they were an advocate, that means a lot. It always warms my heart, and I hear that a lot from people, and it's very rewarding to hear that, because it is hard work. The restaurant business is not for everybody. It is
Yeah.
not, and I've learned a lot, being in this business and not being in it before. There's, I think, this glorified perspective of what it is until you're in it, and the grind. And I mean, in this last week, we had 3 different fridges go out
Oh
at one of the
man.
restaurants, at different times. And as we speak right now, I have an ice machine that's not working properly. I picked up ice for one of my locations. So, there's curveballs all the time, that come up, and or people have issues that come up, and it's not for the faint of heart, but it is a very rewarding industry, from a people perspective, and the relationships being built, and yeah, it's something that I take a lot of pride. I'm very proud of the brand that we've created, and how we've affected people in a positive way just from being a restaurant, and for someone to speak up randomly to you like that, like that's pretty cool. Like
Yeah.
I enjoy that.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, my final question for you.
Okay.
You have a vision for the restaurant? Where do you dream of that this could go in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think right now we were gonna expand about a year and a half ago, and we we got a lease on a building in North Austin, and then we had somebody came in and stripped the building entirely of all the electrical off the building, and it was about $150,000 worth of damage, as well as ten
Mm,
months setback in construction. So we ended up having to back out of that deal just because it was not within our capacity to recover from that, and unfortunately insurance didn't cover that. So that was a pretty big hit we took. In hindsight, as I look back at that, I think it was a blessing in disguise, for me personally and for the business. I had mentioned not having a day off other than one day when my son was born when we first opened. I think I would have been back at that point.
mm,
And with my kids older, the only way it would have survived is if I was there that much, during that time. And I'm not willing to sacrifice that time with my kiddos, at
yeah.
the moment, because this was like a 7,000 square foot restaurant.
It's big.
Yeah, it's big. It's gonna be a big staff, and just figuring it out and putting a team together to lead that would have taken a lot of time, from where we were at that point. So, in reflection, I see that as a good thing that it didn't happen, and a lesson learned. And let's fine tune the 2 locations that we have as
Mm,
best as they can be, and that's really where I'm at with them right now. I've There's some other things, I think outside the restaurant that, a little bit of exploration there that's for myself that stemmed from being in the restaurant industry. Um, but for the restaurants, right now it's just fine tuning them, and being the leader that's needed, and with the staff that's there, and developing the staff that's there to where they can feel ownership themselves, of the locations, and yeah, just kind of maximizing what they're capable of with those 2 locations for now.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the electrical that was stripped, that was theft.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah, so
I've heard of a lot of things getting
yeah,
stolen,
it's
but
copper. Yeah, so they stole the copper off the building, which was the electrical.
and
Yeah.
so I'm assuming that's an item you can turn around and sell
Yeah,
for.
so what we were told, so I had an
Jeez.
electrician say $150,000 repair, and for the amount of copper that was stolen off the building was probably about $3,000 for that, whoever took it off for them to sell that copper for. So $150,000 repair, $3,000 collected by those persons that
Yeah.
stole it. But
This
again, it's something I reflect on, and I'm like, thank goodness, if we would have gone through with that, I don't think I'd be on the path that I'm on now that I prefer to be on.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know what'd be crazy? This probably wouldn't happen, but stranger things have happened. What if like 2 weeks or a month after this episode releases, I forward you an email and this individual reached out and was like, "Hey, I heard this episode. I just want to say I'm sorry for for stealing all your copper."
Well, I would tell them, well, I hope that 3,000 you got went to good use, and ultimately thank you, because like I do look back on that, and I do think it was a blessing in disguise. Didn't really, wouldn't have said that at the time. It brought a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety about the future of the company as a whole, just because of what that could have done. But now I have a different reflection on it, and it was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the same thing about the podcast sometimes. Starting in 2023, there's so many millions of shows out there. It's like,
Yeah.
man, if I had started this 5 years ago or even right before the pandemic, like
Yeah.
maybe I, would have seen success go like this instead
Right.
of like this. But I think that even in a similar vein, but for different reasons, I had a lot of growing up to do too, and just
Yeah.
self-reflection to do. And I think in hindsight, it started at just the time it was
Yeah.
meant to be started. And so, that phase of like kicking myself for being stuck in analysis by paralysis for
Yeah.
so long, it was a good thing. And,
Yeah.
and I think there are times in life where we do probably overanalyze things, and it's like, just get to work already.
Right.
But I also think that sometimes timing is just it was made the way it was supposed to be made for
Yep.
whatever reason,
Yep.
and maybe it'll take us 6 months, a year, 2 years to be able to realize that.
Right.
But it's not a bad thing sometimes when
Yeah.
you get those setbacks.
I think there's lessons there, and there's reasons typically when those things happen, and that's the path that we're supposed to go on, and there's things to take from that.
Yeah. Well, Justin, thank you again for being
Yeah,
here. Is
thanks for
there
having me.
anything else that we forgot to highlight for the business, or anything you wanted to talk about that we forgot to touch on?
Nothing off the top of my head. No.
All right, cool. Well, let's get you out of here
right.
then. To the audience, again, you guys, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. I appreciate it. If you happen to live in Austin, or you're going to be visiting Austin sometime soon, take a stop at Toss Pizzeria. I might even go tonight, as we've been
should.
talking about it. I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, I'm so hungry. I don't have a thing in the fridge right now. I might just order a pizza
Do
and
it.
go buy one. In the meantime, guys, stay healthy, stay happy, and have a good Saturday night. Bye, everyone.